Does your brain ever feel like this? Spending all of its time handling to-do lists, checklists, remembering passwords, grocery lists, anything that you have to do to keep your house in order and your job. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a USB stick we could just plug into our brains, download things, and remember them? Well, today I have an idea that will help you with your craft projects that you've already finished, and you can't quite remember what they look like and how you did something. Today I'm going to show you how to make a manual USB stick for your crafts that will help you remember what your project looked like and what you did to create it. Let's get started. So this is a project that I came up with when I started to realize that I had created a lot of projects that I couldn't remember exactly what I did and what they looked like. So I created this and I want to share it with you. Now, I made it in the Traveler's Notebook size, and basically I started out with 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, and what I did was I divided this in half so that one side could be all of your notes and the information. This side could be pictures if that's what you wanted to do, or you can write additional notes. On this sheet of paper, I have a free template for you, and the link will be in the description box below. And there's a very faint line right across here, and you probably can't even see it on camera, but there's a very faint line, and that's your first cut line. And then from this line you want to measure 8 3/8, which is the size of a traveler's notebook. And from there all you have to do is print it. Well, print it first and then cut it out. What I did, there's 2 pages, it's a PDF, 2 pages that look just like this, so that you could print them front and back if your printer does that. If it doesn't, then print one and then stick it back in your printer and print on the opposite side, because you really want to have front and back. Mine consisted of 6 sheets of paper, and just let me walk you through this first and then we'll go ahead and get in the project. So this was my cover, and then my opening page, I just put something here just to, set it off. So my projects, you could put, anything that you wanted right there. And then when you open it up, you start right in with the first project. And how this is set up is the name of your project goes here, the date you started it and completed it, then the source. So if it was a digital download that you got, if it was from a website, a YouTube video, just something to remind you where it came from. And then if it was a gift, swapped, sold, or other, which this was a giveaway, this was a steampunk journal that I made. And then you start making notes all about the project. And it really helps to do it either as you go along or right after you finish your project. And then I just dropped in some pictures that would help me remember what it looked like. Then I went on to a second project, and this was zines. And I didn't put all 4 of them in here. These are the first couple zines that I made, and I might put my other ones in here as well. But I wanted to capture more the idea of the zine than necessarily what they look like, because I still have the originals of these. But again, I put all of the information about the zine and what I wanted to remember, and that the source was a YouTube video by Jordan Clark. This is another one that I'm working on right now, and this one I do not have pictures of. So I'm just going to go ahead and write more details in here about the project. And then I have lots of room to go ahead and fill this up. Now this is super simple to make, very easy. So let me show you what you're going to need. You're going to need a piece of cardstock. So this is just medium weight cardstock. You could use a file folder, just a piece of cardstock, cereal box, anything that's about that weight, something that you can easily fold. But it can't be scrapbook paper because that's a little bit too light. So just something that you can make for your cover. You're going to need an awl, and some type of, it can be wax linen, it can be embroidery floss, anything that you have that you want to sew your book together with, and a needle, a bone folder, the old standard tools now, scissors, and a couple of clips to hold your signature together while we sew. And then you want something that you can use when you punch your holes with your awl. And I use a foam book. Just any kind of book will work. You just want to make sure you've got something that you can put your signature down in there, and I'll show you that. And that's it. You'll want some Mod Podge for your cover, any words that you want to add. And then if you like to wax your cover, the wax, of course, which I'll show you how to do that with, like I did on this one. Okay, so let's get started with the cover first. So I chose my paper, and it's from the Dear Lizzie documentary. It was a hot buy that I got at Michael's, I think it was last year. And it's cardstock weight, and so it will work perfectly. So I picked out my paper, and I then picked out my image. So I've got that ready to go. And what I did for time's sake is I've cut my paper down to, so this was a 12 by 12 sheet, and I cut it down to 9 inches wide and 8 3/8 tall, which is the size of a traveler's notebook. That's 9 inches by 8 1/2. I'm sorry, I said 8 3/8, 8 1/2. Okay, and what I did was went to my scoreboard. You don't have to do this, you can just fold it. But I scored it down the center at 4 1/2 inches and then folded it. And I wanted to have just a little bit of something along the edge, so I took a piece of washi tape and I just folded it, halfway like we do on our journal pages, and I did it on both sides just to make sure that it was good and strong. I rounded my corners, so I wanted to go ahead and get that done. And so the next thing I'm going to do is get my image down. So I decided on my image, and I cut it out, and I highlighted the piece with my Prisma pencils, like I love to do. I just love Prisma pencils. So I went in and highlighted her eyes, her mouth, her hair, the fish. I added some doodling around here, just enough to make it stand out. And so I also have a little label here that came from Marianne Moss. She has a sheet of quirky labels, and so I decided that's the one I wanted to put on. And then I'm going to go ahead and use Mod Podge Matte, and this is a fairly new bottle, so I think it's thin enough. I don't need to add any water to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. So let's get started with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is use my Distress collage brush, because I love it, and I'm going to put matte medium on the back of this piece. So let's go ahead and get that on there. And I'm just going to put an even coat and a fairly, it's not thin, you just want to be generous with your matte medium. Okay, and I'm going to open up my piece and turn it because it's easier for me to work this way. And I know that I want my girl to be just overhanging a little bit on the washi tape. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth that down. And I'm going to use my burnishing cloth and just make sure everything is down. So I can see that I have a little bit of overhang. If this was something exciting, I would maybe wrap it around the back, but because it's nothing very exciting, I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. Okay. And again, I'm going to make sure that everything is burnished down. And I think that looks good. Isn't she cute? Okay, the next thing I want to do is put my bliss on. So I'm trying to get all my pieces down before I actually put the matte medium over the whole piece. So I'm just going to put that on there. I'm going to put that right about there. Okay, I'm going to burnish that. Okay, I think everything's down good. The next thing I'm going to do is, I'm going to turn this over. The next thing I'm going to do is just put matte medium over the entire piece. So we'll go ahead, it doesn't matter which side you start on. And I just go down, just pull straight down. And I'm going to go right over that washi tape so it encases that. And then I go one long pull straight down so, you know, it just looks a little bit better. I've tried swirling it on. I've tried just straight pulling it down. And it seems to work best when I pull straight down. Now I told you I enhanced all of the colors on her face. And they're going to look a little brighter even when I finish with this. But I did not dot her eyes yet. And the reason I didn't is I found it runs a little bit. Even though it's supposed to be waterproof, it does run a little bit. So, okay, I think that's good. We're going to go ahead and just set this off the side to dry. And as soon as it's dry, then we'll come back and we'll wax it. Okay, so my piece has had time to dry. It's been about 30 minutes, and I wanted to make sure it was good and dry. And you can see that it's curling slightly. Don't worry about that. We're going to set it under some books once we finish everything, and it'll be just fine. So I did go ahead and dot her eyes now that I've put in put the matte medium over it. And again, I used a Uniball Signo white pen, and I just applied a dot on each eye to really help brighten that up. And I don't think I'm going to do anything else. I want to keep the cover pretty simple, so I'm not even going to add any doodling. So we want to go ahead and get started with the waxing. Again, I use this Minwax finishing paste, and I only use this because I had this in the house when I first decided to try it, and it worked great, so I'm using it. And you know, it's a giant can. I've hardly used anything of it. I have a stencil brush, an old stencil brush that I use to swirl it on. If you don't have a brush, you can just use a rag and swirl it on. So I go into this and I just run it around a couple of times. And I'm not sure if you can actually see the wax that's on there, but it's not terribly a lot. It's not a lot. So you just kind of get a couple good passes, and then I just start swirling it on. And I do work it into the paper. And I should tell you also while we're going through this that if you wanted an aged look, I would sand this before I went ahead and put on the wax. Lightly sand it. Okay, so I think there's enough on that side. I've worked it in enough. And I went right over the washi tape. If you had fabric or something that you were using, I would not go over the fabric. Okay, I'm going to start over here. Just swirl, continue to swirl, go over everything. Now my piece was printed on copy paper. This particular piece was printed on a laser printer, but I have done this with an inkjet printer and I've not had any problems with it. So whatever you need to do to make sure it works for you. But okay, I think I've got that worked in there nicely. Okay, so I let this dry about 3 to 4 minutes. And once it's dry, I'll come back and I will take a paper towel and get a lot of the wax off, and then I'll use a buffing cloth, which is either an old rag that you have that's clean. This is an old piece of flannel. Or the other half of my t-shirt that I use one half for as burnishing, and I use this to get the wax and buff it and keep them separate, because you will have some wax residue on this, so just make sure that you keep this separate from your other cloth. So let's let this dry a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and buff it off. So it's been about 5 minutes, and the wax is dry on here. When you go like this to the touch, you can feel the wax, but it doesn't have that white coat that you would expect to see with wax. It doesn't do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a paper towel and just kind of start going in a circular motion and getting some of the wax off. And I do that because it helps to keep that cloth a little cleaner. So I'm just going to continue to pull this wax off, and you can see, you may not be able to see it in the camera, but I'm getting a little bit of yellow, which tells me the wax is coming off. And at one point, you're going to feel like this is not going to come off. And then all of a sudden, it will come off. It's a funny thing how all of a sudden it'll get really slick and shiny. And I should see how, I was just going to mention this to you, because you're pushing against this so much, if you have a piece that comes up, just glue it down. If you have a little bit of matte medium right around you, which I just happen to have, go ahead and just put it down with that. Or you can use a glue stick. And just be careful while you're buffing this. Okay, I think I've taken enough of the wax off with the paper towel, and I'm going to just start a circular motion, and I just go up and down and around, and you're just going to keep doing this until you can feel that the wax is off. And it'll get kind of a shine to it. And what'll happen is your piece gets, I don't know, it's a funny, hard thing to describe, sort of leather-like. It gets very pliable and just feels strong. And one of the reasons that you want to put your matte medium on in long strokes is so that you don't see brush marks, because this wax will certainly highlight any brush marks. So what I generally do is do this for a little bit, and because it takes, it can take a while, and I come back and just buff it again whenever I have a few minutes. You can buff it for as long as you want. But as you can see on this piece, it has somewhat, you can see it has a shine when it hits the light, but it looks matte when you're looking down at it. And again, it's really flexible, and it feels good in your hands. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to buff this, and the next thing we're going to do is fold and sew in our signatures, and then we will be done. So at this point, you should have printed out your papers, front and back, and you should have cut your papers down to size, following that line at the top and measuring down 8 3/8 and cutting from there. And then you want to go ahead and fold your pieces. I fold each one individually, so just fold it in half like that. Use your bone folder to give it a good crease, and you'll end up with a little stack of these as you you know, I use 6 pieces of paper, so just fold them, and then you stack one inside the other, just right like one inside the other like that, and give them a little tap. You want to grab your cover because you need that as well, and make sure it's going in the right direction. And it should fit very nicely there, just having a little bit of room on each, just on each edge, like about 1/4 of an inch, and just sort of tap it in there and make sure that it's right where you want it. Grab your bulldog clips. I put one at the top on one side and one at the bottom on the other side. And just check and make sure if everything looks good. It does. So let's go ahead and grab your book, open it up into the center, and what you want to do is just drop this in the center. You want to be able to push that down in there a little bit. Okay? And it's about, you want to take your awl and you go, there is nothing exact about this. I mean, we're not really making a journal that has multiple signatures, so we don't have to make a template or anything. You just eyeball it. I go about 1/4 of an inch, go straight down. So 1/4 to 1/2 an inch at the top, go straight down and push in. And again at the bottom, and a good, looks like right here at the bottom of this little box is a good point. So just push in there, and then you want to go in to the center and push in there. Just push straight in, and there you go. And it's that simple. And when you should have holes coming through your cover on all 3 sides, on all 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you're through with that. The next thing you want to do is grab whatever you're going to use to sew with. If you're going to use the wax linen, or if you're going to use embroidery floss, probably 3 strands of embroidery floss will be sufficient. And you generally do 3 lengths, so just quickly estimate 3 lengths, and that will be plenty for you. And on this journal, I decided to have my tie on the outside, and I think I'll do that again because I don't really want something in the center that's going to obstruct when I'm working, you know, with my writing and any photos I put in there. So to do that, start on the outside and go into the center hole. So just push straight through. You should come right through. And then you can go left or right. It doesn't really matter. You want to leave a tail like that. It's probably about 5 or 6 inches, and that'll just allow you to be able to tie it off. You can go up or down, it doesn't really matter, but you want to go up to the next hole and just go straight on through, and you should be able to, it should push through without any problem. Okay? Then, do you see how that's going? And when you pull, you want to pull the direction in which you're going to sew. You don't want to rip your paper. So if you were to pull it like this, it can rip. So if you want to pull a little bit tight, pull the direction that you're going to sew. So what I'm going to do now is come into this bottom hole. So I'm going to skip the center, and I'm going to go into the bottom hole. And I can't really see mine here. Hold on. Glasses. Just a second. There we go. So there's my bottom hole. Go in, come up like that. Okay, so you have, looks like this. And again, I'm going to pull in the direction I'm sewing, which is this way. So I'm going to go into that center hole and come out. And what I want to do is come out the other side of where that tail is. Okay, so I've got one piece like that and one like that. Again, you want to be careful when you're pulling, and that is sufficient. You don't have to pull real hard. Okay, and the next thing you're going to do is just tie it off. You're going to do a double knot. You want to make sure that you've got a thread on each side of this. Okay, so one over here and one over here. And then it's just a matter of tying right over left and left over right. And if you use wax linen, it's never coming out. It'll be great. Okay, and if you want to tie a bow, go ahead and do that. So I'll just tie one on here for now. Just like that. Cut off any excess. And go ahead and take off your clips now. And look how nice that looks in the center. And then what I like to do is just sort of fold each page over. So you can use your bone folder if you like, or just, go in like that. And just make sure every page looks good. I'm not even putting washi tape on mine. I did just the one front, but that's it. So after you have all your pages creased and open, what I do generally is just set this under a stack of books to let it really get flat. And it'll make sure that these corners don't pop up. And it'll make it, really flat like this one. So, see, I told you guys could do it. It's super simple. And I hope you give it a try because it's a fun thing to have to document your projects. You'll be glad that you have this, 6 months or a year from now when you can't quite remember what you did on something. So that's it. If you have any questions, just leave them down below. I'll leave the link to the PDF in the description box. If you have any problems with that, just leave me a comment. I'm trying a new way, so I'm hoping this works. The trials have worked. I really do hope you give this a try. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.